welcome to LifeTalk Now. I'm Mark Crutcher.
And I'm Renee Hobbs. Thanks for joining us. And look who's back.
Yeah, I think the reports of my death were greatly exaggerated.
Yeah,
apparently so.
Well, people were concerned. They
Yeah.
were worried about you.
I heard yesterday that Renee was in my office measuring for new drapes
That is so not true.
and figuring out where she was going to put her furniture in my office once I croaked.
No,
But-
he's wrong.
No, I'm not wrong.
I'm not ready for him to go anywhere.
Yeah, well, anyway, it doesn't matter whether you're ready or you're not. I'm going to go whenever I go.
No, we won't let him.
Yeah. Anyway, I appreciate everybody's prayers, and my wife said that a lot of people were calling, all concerned about what was happening to me, and my own daughter called and wondered, what's wrong with Daddy? What's wrong with Daddy? You know, sometimes people just get sick. Now, it is very unusual for me to get sick. This is probably the first time in 10 or 15 years that I've missed a day of work from being sick. Never have I missed one since you've been here.
No.
And
You're not allowed to get sick.
I'm not allowed to get sick. So anyway, this was just kind of an unusual situation. But I'm back. Like I said, the reports of my demise were greatly exaggerated. I'm still here, hanging
Yes,
on.
You are.
So you'll have to try a little harder next time, Renee. Renee has
Okay.
made several attempts on my life over the years.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe we're doing this
I
live.
had to buy a car with one of those remote starter things
Mm-hmm.
because I was concerned about her hooking up some kind of explosive device to my car.
Right.
Anyway, moving on. Recently, I've been attacked a few times, and I've been attacked about this over the last 35 years or so, many, many times. And then last week, even Renee got attacked online, and
Yeah.
people
It was a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, I
by,
was attacked.
by fellow pro-lifers. And one of the arguments that you hear these people make, and this is the argument that I heard the other day directed at me, and then it was kind of directed at Renee as well, is that the pro-life movement is a waste of time, that everybody's in this to make money, or that everybody's in here. And believe me, I made a heck of a lot more money in private industry right now than I ever would have made in the pro-life movement, but that's beside the point. I don't know of anybody. There's a lot of people in this movement that I don't particularly like and that I don't necessarily get along with, and that I think maybe what they're doing is not very effective or whatever. But I don't believe there's a person in this movement, not one, who's in it for the money. If they are, they're an idiot, because there's no money here to be made if they're in it for the money. And you can't make enough money to put up with the grief and the stress that this thing brings. You can't make enough money to make it worth that.
That's right.
But these people, and we've gone through this stage many times over the years in the pro-life movement. These movements will arise occasionally, and they'll be dominated by these people who basically say to the pro-life movement, what you're doing is worthless, stand back, we'll show you how to do this. And they'll even question your pro-life credentials, they'll question whether you're a Christian or not. They'll question everything, and they'll call you names, which has happened recently with both of us.
Right. And they think their way is better than anybody else's.
Well, it's not a matter, it's okay to think it's better. It's not a matter of thinking it's the only way.
Right.
And that if you're not doing it my way, it's my way or the highway. If you're not
Right.
doing things our way,
Right.
then you're not purely pro-life. And there's a lot of people out there that'll tell you that I'm not pro-life and that Renee's not pro-life. Those people are liars. Those people don't know what they're talking about. And one of the things that I always point out to people is that when you see these groups that pop up like this, almost without exception, they're dominated by people who aren't doing anything. The only contribution they make to the pro-life movement is to criticize what other people are doing, but they don't actually do anything themselves. But to suggest, beyond that, to suggest that the pro-life movement hasn't accomplished anything is pure nonsense. And let me give you some statistics that'll help back this up. One of the analogies that I often make is to the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union broke up, and by the way, the Soviet Union was the first industrialized nation on earth to legalize abortion. When the Soviet Union broke up, the Russian government had massive health problems with women in their country. These women in the Soviet Union were sick beyond what you can imagine. They had massive health issues with their female population. So they did some research, found out a lot of it was attributed to abortion. But one of the things that they discovered was that during the time of the Soviet Union, the average Soviet woman, had 9 abortions during her childbearing years. In some parts of the Soviet Union, it was common for women in those regions to have 24 or 25 abortions in their childbearing years. And this created massive health problems. But the point here is, Renee, that those kind of numbers are what happens in a society where the pro-life movement does not exist.
That's right.
That's what happens when
Yes.
you have that.
Right.
And my argument would be that had we not had a vibrant pro-life movement in this country, we'd have had the exact same experience as what the Soviets had. There's no reason to think we wouldn't have. Matter of fact, it might have been worse. But let's think about something, Renee. We were talking about this the other day. If you go back to the early 90s, when the abortion rate was at its highest in America, there were 2,126 freestanding abortion clinics in the country, 1.6, 1.7 million abortions a year. The abortion movement was rocking. The pro-life movement became much more aggressive during this time. Since that time, there's now about, you keep closer to, how many abortion clinics are there now?
About at 550 or so, probably less than that now, but.
Right. So 3/4 of the abortion clinics in this country have closed down since the early 1990s.
Right.
Do not tell me that would have happened
That's
without the pro-life movement.
that's the pro-life movement and the pro-life laws that have
Right.
been put into place.
That's right. That's right. The pro-life legislation that's been put in place and the pro-life movement's educational efforts and their aggressive tactics against the abortion clinics, it has closed down 3/4 of them. The result of that is that we now have, last year, slightly under 1 million abortions done in this country. Now, 1 million babies being killed is still a national disgrace.
It's a tragedy.
It's a tragedy.
Yes, it is.
But if you compare it to the early 90s, when it's now 3,000 babies a day, then it was 5,000 babies a day.
Right.
That means that we're killing more than 2,000 babies less
Right.
per day
Right.
now
Right.
than we were in the 1990s.
With a larger population.
Yes, that's a good
Right.
point. With a larger population, we're killing 2,000 babies fewer than we were killing then.
Right.
You're not going to tell me that the pro-life movement didn't have any hand in that.
That means we're doing something.
That would have just happened whether we were here doing what we are doing, and even some of these groups that I don't really have. I don't want to say that I don't approve of what they're doing. Sometimes I question the efficiency of what they're doing. Some groups, but I'm going to tell you right now, without even the efforts of the groups that I don't have a lot of faith in, they help to lower the abortion rate. And these people sit here and say, well, you're not pro-life because you guys have supported legislation that doesn't stop all abortions. It just stops a few abortions. You do what you can do at the time. That's what you have to do. You don't have any choice about that. And you've heard these. I'll clean up my language. You hear some of these people sometimes say, well, you go for this language, this rhetoric in these bills that says, if you'll do this, 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 and this, then you can kill the baby. Well, that's not what we're saying at all. That's not what we're saying. We're saying this, 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 and this will save these babies. We have a choice to do that, or we have a choice to do nothing, which is what these people are doing.
Right.
They're not doing anything.
Right.
Now, they will say you can't call yourself pro-life and support that type of legislation. I would say you can't call yourself pro-life and not rejoice in the 2,000 babies that are not going to be killed today that would have been killed had we not passed those pieces of legislation.
Right.
You can't call yourself pro-life and not rejoice in those babies.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Well, and real quick, Chris Michael had posted something on here, let's work together to end abortion. And he goes on to say a whole lot more, which thank you, Chris, for that comment, because we all do need to work together to end this, every single one of us.
And that includes us, and I've talked to you about this before. We have to work with people that we may not agree with what they do.
Yeah.
We may not agree that what they're doing is efficient or that it's going to accomplish anything or it doesn't fit the kind of stuff that Life Dynamics does. It doesn't mean they're wrong. And just because they do things differently than I do doesn't mean that I don't think they're pro-life. That is utterly preposterous.
Right.
Now, one of the things that's interesting, I'll have people call every once in a while and complain to me about something that Life Dynamics is doing, or they'll rag on me about this particular subject or whatever. One of the things I always do, 100% of the time when somebody does that, is I'll say, okay, now wait a minute, before you go further, I'll interrupt them and say, before you go further, just so I know who I'm dealing with here, let me ask you a question. What's your role in the pro-life movement? What are you doing? I need to know that before I can respond to it and change the things that I'm doing. So tell me what you're doing. I have never asked somebody that question that the answer wasn't, even though they won't answer it this way, but the answer was always, I'm not doing anything. I'm standing on the sidelines. I'm up in the stands. And I'm complaining about what everybody down on the field's doing. The people down on the field that are getting their noses broken and they're bloodied and bleeding and actually in the fight. I'm just up in the stands. I'm really, and I've told some of them this, I said, you're not really pro-life. What you are is you're a fan of being pro-life. You know, you're like the guy that goes down to the Cowboy game and has got him a jersey, and he sits up in the stands and he knows everything that everybody on the field is doing wrong.
He's a better coach and a better player.
He's a better coach and a better player than anybody down there on the field, but they're the ones down there getting the crap beat out of them, right? And he's up in the stands getting drunk. And so, that's the same situation that we've got right here. And I don't have a problem with somebody that looks at me and says, hey, I don't like what Life Dynamics does. I don't like the kind of things you do. I don't like your attitudes. I don't like whatever. You're certainly free to disagree with anything we do. But I'm going to tell you this right now. I don't believe that anyone who's not actively engaged in doing something to end this has earned the right to criticize anybody for what they're doing to stop it.
That's right.
I don't think they've earned it right. And as I often tell people, you know, the guy who rows the boat doesn't have time to rock it. You know, so these people are all boat rockers, but they're not going to row. They're not going to do any rowing.
They don't want the heavy lifting here.
That's right.
Also, be sure to comment or ask questions or whatever you want to do on this. It's right here in front of me. We can answer anything that we find as worthy to be answered. So.
Yeah, and if we don't get to it today, or if you see this later and you know it's not live, leave a comment there. We'll go over tomorrow or whatever. We'll peruse through these things and find out the comments that we can address. But anyway, that's our show for today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, remember, what is it?
Remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how this killing's going to stop.
That's right.
See you tomorrow.
Good girl.